And that was our defense.
Welcome to the 2023 School District Deliberative Session.
My God, damn.
My name's Robert Desmelik. I'm the moderator. I'm going to start off the evening with a very special thing. We have a guest with us tonight, a student in the 11th grade, Abby Ali Violet, who will be singing the national anthem. Ms. Violet.
Band. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed, how the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets the bombs bursting, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the hope of the free.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. I'd like to ask now the chairman of the board, please lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So let me take a moment to introduce the people that are here tonight, and then we'll get started with the rest of the meeting. Behind me, our district clerk, Phyllis Kennedy, Matt Angel, the business administrator, Jim O'Shaughnessy, legal counsel from Drummond Woodson, Superintendent Thomas Ambrose, Jamie Fitzpatrick, vice chair of the school board, Dawn Dutton, our school board chairman, Tammy Mahoney from the school board, Rick Edelman from the school board, Heather Ingram from the school board, Maura Bashaw from the school board, Courtney Hewitt, the chair of the budget committee, Dan Guide, the vice chair of the budget committee, Ken McNulty from the budget committee, Christine Kosmitsky from the budget, and then JJ DeFeo, the student representative to the school board. So before we get into the warrant, I wanted to take a second to just talk on a personal note about something I learned about today. And it's a project that's going on here at Sanborn, being led by Mr. Enright, where we have the Sanborn submarine team. It was a new thing for me to learn about, and frankly, I just wanted to talk about it for a second. They're planning on competing this summer at the end of June in what's called the Submarine Project. Submarine Project is an international competition held at the U.S. Naval Surface Warfare Center in West Bethesda, Maryland. They have a large tank, and the nature of this contest is a race to see how fast you can go in a human-powered small submarine. We're up against some very tough competition. Teams come from all over the world. Many of them come from colleges. We're lucky that it looks like UNH has an ocean engineering facility, and they have offered us some assistance in testing and so on. The goal is to go the highest speed you can in this human-powered vehicle underwater over about 100 meters. And I'll just note, without getting into any details, being someone who studied that kind of engineering, that's a lot harder than it looks. A group of students working on it, and the skills they need, including scuba certification, because you have to be scuba certified, because this little submarine is full of water for safety, and the operator's wearing a scuba set. And they have to do all the work to prepare this thing and go to the races and so forth. It's a fantastic learning experience for the people involved. Since there's a lot of taxpayers here and we're talking about that a bit tonight, it's funded from donations by outside parties. So I'd just like to express my support, and I think all of us wish them well. May they have great success and luck in their endeavor. You can learn more about them. They have a website, sanbornmedia.org/submariners. And I think it's just a fun thing, and I hope they're very successful this summer in their efforts. So on to the business at hand tonight, the warrant. To the inhabitants of the Sanborn Regional School District in the towns of Kingston and Newton qualified to vote in district affairs. This will be our first session of the annual meeting, the deliberative session. You are hereby notified to meet at the Sanborn Regional High School Auditorium at 17 Danville Road in Kingston on Wednesday, the 8th day of February 2023 at 7 p.m. Obviously, everyone in the room already knew that. That's why we're here. This session shall consist of explanation, discussion, and debate of each of the following warrant articles except for Article 1. Warrant articles may be amended subject to the following limitations. The first is that warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. The second is that warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for a final vote on the main motion as amended. And third, no warrant article shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter. I imagine we have everyone in the room who's in the voting body here are residents. If you're not a resident, don't vote. I doubt we'll have any close calls, but if we do, we will, based on the choice of the people here, we'll and vote or a division vote so we can tell exactly what. In terms of discussion, we are sharing this with other people who are not present by a kind of a video streaming. So it is important to use the microphone. It's very easy when we have, discussion or questions for somebody to say, make a follow-up question without stepping back to the mic. The problem is for someone who's trying to watch it on video is then they don't know what got said. So there is a microphone here. And if we can just try to remember to use the microphone, it's kind of a little bit of hike to get to it. That'll be helpful for the people who are not present tonight. So the voting on these articles will be conducted by official ballot to be held in conjunction with the town meeting voting in each town on Tuesday, the 14th of March upcoming. Kingston voters, you'll be voting at the Swayze Gymnasium in the old seminary campus, which is located at 180 Main Street. Polls are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. there. Newton voters will be voting at the Newton Safety Complex, which is located at 8 Merrimack Road. And the polls also are open for 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. in Newton. So first article, I'm just going to briefly summarize it. It's not subject to amendment here. That's just to elect the officers. Just as a reminder, there will be for the school board, there's going to be one member from Kingston for 3 years, one member from Newton for 3 years, and one member at large representing Kingston and Newton for 3 years. The moderator's post is up for election yearly. The budget committee has one member from Newton for 1 year, one member from Newton for 3 years, and one member from Kingston for 3 years as well in the upcoming election. So on to the articles. Article 2, general acceptance of reports. Shall the reports of districts, agents, auditors, committees, or officers chosen be accepted and placed on file? Do we have any amendments or discussion on that article? Seeing there is none, it will go on to the ballot as presented. Article 3, the operating budget. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote at the first session, for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $38,730,592. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $38,758,474, the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Sanborn Regional School District or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. This warrant article does not include appropriations in any other warrant articles. It is recommended by the Budget Committee in favor 5 and opposed 1. It was recommended by the Sanborn Regional School Board in favor 7, opposed 0. The operating budget has an estimated tax impact for Kingston residents of $1.48 per thousand, for Newton residents of $1.53 per thousand. The default budget estimated tax impact for a Kingston resident is $1.50 per thousand, and for Newton, $1.55 per thousand. I'm sure somebody is waiting to speak to this warrant, and I'm looking to my left because I have a feeling they're on the Budget Committee. So why don't we start off with the Budget Committee comments on this, and then we can get to other questions, discussion, and if warranted amendments.
All right, thank you. My name is Courtney Hewitt. I'm the chair for the Budget Committee, and I'm going to be presenting some slides. I'd like to start out by welcoming everyone, all the Kingston and Newton residents, for being here tonight. I also want to thank our moderator, our secretary, Eileen, Phyllis, and everyone who helps support these events. Matt, next one. All right. We already went through this, but I think it warrants a second discussion. The school budget requires collaboration between the administration, the school board, the budget committee, and I believe it's important to know who your local representatives are. Today, we're joined by the administration, Tom, Matt, the school board, and we're gonna move on to the next slide. All right, so we're going to go into the details of how we got to the article and the numbers. The budget process is a collaboration between all of the parties. The goals are set by the school board, and we have some slides later on that talk about the goals of the school board. The department heads, principals, business administration, superintendent prepare the budget based on the goals and the needs of the district. This year, Tom presented the budget via video and it was shared online. Both the budget committee and the school board review the budget, all 1,500 lines, and any questions are addressed by Tom and Matt. And this year, we had roundtable discussions with the department heads and principal of the schools to review the process and their budgets. After the reviews, the school board deliberates and proposes a budget to the budget committee. This year, some changes were proposed to the initial recommended budget after receiving final numbers for things like tuition, insurance plans, and other minor adjustments found during review. Next. After the school board recommends it, it comes over to the budget committee. The budget committee also deliberates and discusses things like the impact to the taxpayers, any future changes like contract negotiations, and will this budget support the educational needs and the facility needs of the district? And there are more slides about that in the upcoming slides. Next one. All right. I also think we shared the number. It's a large number, 38 million. For me, I wanted to understand the scope of the budget. This is my first year in the budget committee. And for me, it was good or helpful to understand that we support pre-K through 12, special education, classroom supplies, books, technology, transportation. Not only do we pay teachers, but we pay hundreds of other people like referees for basketball games. There are 9 bullets there that talk about all the grounds and buildings that we maintain within the district, including Bakey School, which is getting older, Memorial School, which has been pieced together with modular units, the middle school and high school, Chase Field, Swayze Gym, the Church Street admin building. While we leased the old middle school building to the Seacoast Learning Alliance, we still maintain that building and any technology and infrastructure that's needed to support the classrooms. Also, we're going to talk about the 5-year strategic plan and the capital improvement plan. All right. The 5-year strategic plan was approved by the school board in 2022. There are 5 strategic targets. Target 1 focuses on students, 2 on the district workforce, 3 on infrastructure, 4 on all of you, the community, and 5, the school environment. Next. And one of the biggest goals for the district is improving our education, and these are the 4 core beliefs that Tom shared when recommending the budget. They include aligned curriculum, academic and behavioral intervention, continuous improvement of instruction, and a culture of excellence focused on student achievement for the whole child. Next is the 5-year capital improvement plan, which was also approved in October of 2022. The CIP lists out improvements to be considered in the next 5 years. Here are some examples. I think the message here is you may see requests for funding for some of these changes on the ballots in the upcoming years. DJ Bakey needs some new window latches. As I mentioned, Memorial School and the modular units, parking improvements and security at the high school. Facilities need some new equipment for snow removal and LED upgrades. And technology. What else? Us be here today. Next. So we've talked about, we have a 5-year strategic plan. We have a plan in place to help improve education, and we have a capital improvement plan, but there's still more that we need to consider when developing the budget. In 2024, we pay off the bond on the high school, and that will free up $2.3 million. We have aging infrastructure that we need to upgrade and maintain. Fremont pays us around $3.6 million annually in tuition, and their 20-year contract ends in 2026. And we need to be able to attract and retain students. The moderators already read this. I'm going to save you guys the trouble of reading it again. I think that what I want to say is the operating budget is $38,730,592. Our default budget is $38,758,474. The next slide talks about the comparison of the two. So the difference between our current budget, which is $37,339,353, and the current proposed, it's a 3.73% increase over the current budget. The default budget is slightly higher, which makes it a 3.8% increase over the current budget. And if you subtract the two, we get proposed operating budget is $27,882,000 less than the default. All right. So on the previous slide, it talked about a 3.73% increase. Where is that coming from? That total increase is $1,391,239. That money comes from collective bargaining agreements that were voted upon and approved. So that's a $690,220. Increases in health insurance, $269,881. The retirement program, $140,332. Special education, $224,524. And a grouping of other minor expenses for $66,282. So when the budget committee meets and deliberates and talks a lot about what's happening. We look at things like the default, the operating budget, the differences, other changes that are coming, but we also look at the history and the impact to taxpayers. So this slide here talks about the funds that have been returned each year at the end of the year to the taxpayers to offset the tax rate. There's a bump in the 2019-2020 timeframe due to COVID. So there was a lot of factors that impact that, but we were able to return over $2 million. This year, we're returning back to the $1,175,125 is pre-pandemic average or close to. That's return funds. And then the next slide talks about historic tax rate review. So when we look at this, these are the estimated numbers for the tax rate for Kingston and Newton. You can notice that there is a dip in that time frame from the 2020-21 with that correlates with the return funds for COVID. What I found interesting when looking at these numbers is we've essentially returned back to pre-pandemic levels, and we haven't seen a drastic increase over the past 5 years. The tax rate has stayed relatively flat. This was further shown by a review of taxes paid for specific houses in Kingston and Newton that showed that the amount paid each year was similar. Next slide. Almost there, guys. So what does this mean for you and your home? In here, we list out the range of home values from $300,000 to $500,000. For a $300,000 home in Newton, the tax impact is $5,817 or a $459 increase over last year. For a $300,000 home in Kingston, it's $5,595 or $444 more. I've also included the calculations on how we got that. It includes the previous rates plus the increase to get the total estimated tax impact. I've only included the operating budget. The default budget numbers would be higher. And next slide. All right. So local revenue. What I want to highlight is 74% of our budget comes from taxpayers. 10% of that comes, or 9.5% comes from aid from the state. And then 16%, give or take, is from local revenues. Things like tuition from Fremont, aid from the state for various programs, food sales, and the cafeteria. And again, that's just the makeup for the proposed operating budget of $38,730,592. I think this is the last one for me. Next. So after deliberations and discussions, we believe that this operating budget provides an efficient use of funds and that meets the needs of all the students, funds our intervention programs, and it was recommended by the school board, 7 in favor, 0 against. And then the budget committee, there was an update to your slides if you're looking at it. It was 5 in favor, 1 against was the final outcome from the public hearing. And then I think the next slide is over to Jamie to talk about the default budget.
Thank you, Chairman Hewitt.
Yeah, we talked about the default budget. I'm just going to talk about it a little bit more. So this is defined per the New Hampshire RSA 40-13, Roman numeral 9, section B. And it lists how this is to be calculated as to what a default budget is. So the default budget takes the same appropriations as contained in the operating budget authorized for the previous year. So the budget that everybody voted on last year is the basis for the default budget for the RSA, and that's what we use as the basis. This is then either increased or decreased by debt service, contracts, and other obligations previously incurred or mandated by law. So an example of a previously occurring contract changes the contract that we have with our staff. So the staff contract was voted on. It's a multi-year contract. Those increases are automatically added into the proposed budget and become part of the default budget. That's reduced by one-time expenditure. So if you had a line item, for example, in a budget that said, we're going to replace the roof this year for 150,000, then the following year's default budget would not have that in there because that's a one-time item and it's removed. And it's reduced by salaries and benefits of positions that have been eliminated in the proposed operating. So if in the proposed operating budget, you identify that we're no longer going to need this administrative position or this teaching position or this special education position, once you identify it and remove it from the proposed budget, it must also be removed from the default budget. So those are the rules as they're laid out by the RSA, and we follow those rules and create.
All right, next slide. Thank you. So Jamie talked about two big things that are part of the default budget. So Article 3 last year, we voted on March 8th, 2022. The operating budget was voted on at $37,179,463. Also that year, we voted on Article 4, the support staff collective bargaining agreement. That was $159,890 for a total of $37,339,353.
All right. Continuing with the calculation of the default budget. Is reduced and increased by debt service, contracts, and other obligations previously incurred or mandated by law, including employment contracts and related benefits for professional and support staff, increase of $1,157,483. Special education services, increase of $224,523. Transportation, which is bus contract, that's an increase of $62,954. Utilities, energy needs, increase of $26,395. SAU property lease, increase $7,200. Insurance, which is Primex, increase of $6,436. Debt service, high school and lease debt service, that's a decrease of $65,825. Total debt service, contracts, and other obligations, $1,419,121.
Then back to me. So Chair Dutton had pointed out that last year's was 37,339,353. Ms. Mahoney pointed out the changes of 1419,121. There were no one-time expenditure line items. Salaries and benefits of positions eliminated. There were no positions eliminated. So if you add those two together, you get a total default budget of $38,758,474.
So I'm going to cover the district reserves account balances. You'll notice the date range. The balance has the screen is 12/31/2022. Your handout has November 30th, 2022. So I'll be covering the numbers on the screen. The special education expendable trust fund is $242,819. Capital improvement fund, capital reserve fund, $325,258. Unanticipated educational expenses, capital reserve fund, $251,925. Facilities use revolving fund, $181,383. Unanticipated utility costs, expendable trust fund, $75,550. And the contingency fund per RSA 198:4-B, $537,817.
So
Article 4, unanticipated utility.
Why don't you hold off on that because we're still back on
Oh, okay.
Article 3. We'll hold that for when we get to that point.
To the slide, I got.
Unless you want to talk about it in the context of the,
No.
yeah, I think it's kind of a separate topic. All right. So do we have any other comments at the moment from the board, or should we head to the audience and see if we have some comments or questions? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Gannon from Kingston. I have several questions. Should I just do one at a time and let others come up?
Ms. Gay, you're welcome to do them in any format you would like to.
Thank you. I noticed that the special education expenditures in the operating budget and in the default budget are almost the same. They're off by $1. Can you explain that?
I can answer that. They're contractually obligated increases. I don't know why there's a difference of $1. Angel, is there a difference of $1?
There's a new line item in the operating budget and it would have $1 in it. Oh, it wasn't in the default budget.
So those contracts, are those for staff contracts or?
So it's a special education would be mandated by law because we have to provide special education services to students with individual education plans.
So those are new expenditures in the operating budget?
So it's okay. So it's basically the same number in both the default and the operating budget. And it really depends upon the service being provided to the student. Okay, so it's the service that we're planning to provide to the student in the next fiscal year.
Could you give an estimate? I don't know if this is possible, of any savings that we have realized through the reorganization of the middle school?
I think this is closing the old middle school.
I'm confused as to what that would have to do with this budget.
Just wondering if we have saved any money by doing that in previous budgets, and it was when the reorganization was proposed and then passed.
That's a very complex question that would require slides and a detailed analysis. I don't think we can provide that for you on the fly.
Okay. Looking at the status of the old seminary building.
Eric Chinberg owns the old seminary building.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Eric Chinberg owns the old seminary building.
Oh, so the district no longer has any expenses towards that building?
We have expenses for the Swayze gym that we rent. They're minimal, around 26,000 and change.
Thank you. In regards to the adequacy aid from the state, has that number changed in the past year? And if it has it gone up or down?
I believe it has gone up, and there is proposed legislation to change how the SWEP tax is being calculated, which may affect the adequacy aid. So it's presented at a number that the state has provided us. They provide us an Excel spreadsheet of what they're estimating it using the current laws as they are today. But I think when we set the tax rate in the fall, it's going to be a completely different calculation.
In regards to the reserve funds, do you have numbers that those you anticipate that those funds would be capped at? Is there like a target for capping each of those expendable trust funds?
Here, let me bring this up on this slide. Well, we're asking to put in, I think, $50,000 into the capital improvement fund, and that's really to try to get funds set aside to enact the CIP plan. This is the 5-year plan that we have for the district. That they haven't actually tied the dollar amounts to the plan. However, I can tell you that we need to have a larger reserve in that, or a larger amount in that reserve. The one near the bottom, the unanticipated utility costs, we're asking that put in an additional 75,000. And I think that's going to bring it pretty close to where we should be. And so we can actually set the budget at a lower number for heating oil and electricity. And then we'll have a reserve for any unexpected increases from there.
Are there any anticipated caps or targeted caps for the other funds there, the special ed, the educational expenses?
That's an interesting question. I'm seeing someone waving their hand.
I just want to, so the answer to your question is the establishment of all of these funds have no caps on them.
Okay.
So there isn't any established cap, with the exception of the last one, the contingency fund, that is capped at 2.5% of your operating budget. And then that can only be used for emergencies, else that must be returned to the taxpayers annually. And then the school board can vote the next year to, again, cap at 2.5%. And withhold that for contingency. All of the other funds have no established cap. When they were created, there wasn't a cap established. And I think what Mr. Angel was saying is that given some of the items in the capital improvement plan, that if you did all of those, and the improvement plan is a list of things that need to be investigated, not a commitment to do these things. They each have to have a separate analysis with a cost benefit analysis done. But if all of them were to pass that hurdle and require doing, they would exceed the value of all of the reserves as they exist today.
Yeah, my question was the other funds, and that question had been answered, but like the special ed expendable trust fund, we'll keep putting money in that, or is that kind of at what we're hoping to have so that it will cover, I know the unanticipated.
So the monies that go into these funds only go into the funds through warrant articles. So if we deem that new funds are needed, a warrant article goes to the electorate for the second part of the deliberative, the actual voting at the town halls or the fire stations, as it may be. And that would determine what goes back in. So right now, you could consider that absent a vote of the public, these are capped. You can't just add extra money into them. They only get added to when monies are voted by the voters to be put into them. And generally speaking, the way that the warrant articles are written is that comes from unexpended funds at the end of the year.
Except if I may, the facilities use revolving
Yes, thank
fund receives funds from the rental of the old middle school. And that amount is how much, Matt, annually?
It's about $140,000 a year.
So we receive $140,000 a year from the rental of the old middle school. So the facilities use revolving fund is based on revenue, not voter. I just didn't,
Yep. Oh, thank
Mr.
you.
Fitzpatrick was correct, except for that fund.
That's correct.
And have we been spending money out of these funds in the past year? And
So
are they at healthy levels right now? If we do have something that's unanticipated, I know obviously unanticipated, you don't know what it's going to cost, but is there like a percentage?
So
of
there's 3 items right
budget?
now that I can think of where there's been some authorizations and some spending in this past year. We had authorizations on the Special Education Trust Fund by the board to allow for the hiring of 2 special ed teachers. We had authorization for the unanticipated education fund for hiring of 1 teacher, regular education. Those funds have not been expended. And we are doing everything that we can to make sure that those costs come out of the general fund and not out of the reserves, so we maintain the reserves. On the revolving fund, we did authorize and spent, or at least encumbered, about $90,000 to upgrade the wireless systems in the district. And so that happened over the past year.
So that didn't come out of the operating budget.
That came out of the revolving fund
Okay.
at the end of last year.
And can you just, last question, give us an idea of what the contingency fund would be used for? The other
Extreme
ones are kind of
emergencies.
self-explanatory.
Would you like to?
So
I don't need to answer.
I can give you the perspective of
Yeah.
one member of a board. If a roof caved in, that's an emergency. You need to spend the monies. They're not available in the line item on a budget. That's where we'd go with the contingency.
Okay.
I personally would not consider it an emergency just because we wanted something. It'd be nice to have this. It'd be nice to have that. That's not what that's intended for.
So that's more of the structural things, the contingency fund, as opposed to hiring a teacher would come out of.
So
the-
that's how I would look at it. You'd have to ask each board member how they would look at it. That's how I would look at it. The law used to be that if in fact you wanted to spend that, the board had to approve it, the school board, the budget committee had to reprove it, had to be reviewed by the Department of Revenue Administration, and it had to be reviewed by the Department of Education. That law was changed, and it can be decided on an expenditure at a public hearing by the school board. But the intentions of the discussions that we've had in public on this issue is that this is emergency. It's not I'd like to have, it's a need. This has to happen. We're in a dire situation. There are no other options, kind of spend.
And so that would come to the board on a case-by-case basis, and the board would authorize the expenditures.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
My name is Robert Jeffrey. I was just wondering, like, what year did we shut down the middle school? 21?
2020.
20?
In the pandemic, yes.
See, the thing is, I don't remember my taxes staying flat or sort of flat. And if we're collecting rent from the building and we're not employed people in there, why does the budget still go up $1 million every year? No, I understand. But I don't want to insult anybody, but figures lie and liars figure. You know what I mean? It's, if you shut down the school, the budget should either be the same or maybe a little higher, but it goes up $1 million every year. I know I'm repeating myself, but anybody know why? Well, thank you.
Take it.
I think it's a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
It's rhetorical. It's a rhetorical question.
I don't think so.
Go ahead, answer it.
So I'll take that on. When that was done, there were funds identified, and there was a presentation to the community as to how much money was going to be saved in there. I forget the actual number. $1.5 million, I think, or $1.5 million went back to the taxpayers, and 900,000 or so was in for intervention.
Mhm.
And if you look at the slide 13 in the packets, where it's a list of the monies returned, you'll see in 2019, 20, and 2020, 21, we did actually have 2.3 million and 2.3 million returned, as opposed to 1 million that it had been. In addition, I forget that the year of that changed, there were some adjustments, and we did bring in a proposed budget that was lower than the prior year's proposed budget or actual budget.
Yeah.
So those were rolled through at the time. Certainly, I can understand the perspective of, we just had a large increase in our taxes in December when you saw your bills. And that was the result of voter decisions on warrant articles in both towns, as well as the warrant articles for the school district. So if you took the warrant articles for Newton, which I represent, and you added those to the town and the school district, those went up about $1,000 on a $350,000 house. So the driver of that is the electorate's decision on the articles that are presented. Now, you can be an electorate and say, well, that's what you recommended as a school board or what have you, and that's true. But that is where the increases have come from. But those changes that we made on the original reorganization were returned back to the district. And when we had extra monies during the COVID that you see asterisked in 2019, 20, and 2021, those did increase the amount that rolled back to the community by over $1 million from what it had.
And certainly, sir, if you would like to meet, I would be happy to show you the year-to-year budgets for the last 5 or 6 years so that you can see that there have been some budgets that have gone forward that actually had a decrease and some that had an increase. But it's important to recognize that, as Mr. Fitzpatrick said, the warrant articles also get added on each year to the budgets. It's not as simple as how much did we save from closing the middle school, or how much has the budget gone up or down from year to year. You have to look at the whole picture over a series of years. I'd be happy to do that for you. If you'd like to take a look at it, just give me a call. I'm happy to sit down.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, sir. And if we could ask the tech crew, if we can get a little more volume on this mic locally.
Oh, not for Barry. You got the wrong guy for that call.
Barry Gluck from Newton. I didn't see in the packet any enrollment forecasting. Maybe I just missed it. Did I just miss it?
It's in here.
In the presentation?
In the book.
Is it in the annual?
On page 27.
But okay, so it wasn't, it's,
Page 27 in the annual.
thank you.
No problem at all. And Barry, just for the town, it's 1,402 next year.
Other questions, comments, or discussion? Anyone from the board? Last chance, folks. Seeing, gosh, okay, here we go. Thank you.
Sorry, Cheryl Gannon, Mr. Gluck. Brought a question to mind. So page 27 is the enrollment as of October 2022. Do we have any projected enrollments for next year?
Are you asking what the projected enrollment is for next year?
Yes.
No, future years.
Yeah, it's very similar,
Similar?
very similar, close. I think it's 1401. I can't remember exactly.
For 2024,
Yeah, 324.
1,404 total.
4. I knew it was 1 or 2
High
off.
school.
1404?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing there is none, the article will go on to the ballot without amendment as presented.
Mr. Moderator. I'd like to
Yes, sir.
make the proverbial motion to restrict reconsideration for Article 2.
That's fine. Do we have a second?
Second.
Just as a brief explanation, I imagine everyone in the room knows what this motion is about. But historically, in town meetings and in school district meetings, people can revisit an article. In other words, come back and talk about it again, perhaps amend it. And historically, what would happen is people would stay for the important articles. And by the time they got down to like Article 30, many people had left. And then people might come back and revisit Article 2 or Article 3 or something and kind of start the process again without everyone else being present. So it is traditional in many times to have a motion. It's your choice as the voters. It's one of the few votes you take where you're limiting your own power. So you're saying, we're not going to come back in the course of this meeting and revisit this topic. So technically, there can be discussion on that article. Does anyone have any questions or comments on it? Seeing there are none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes carry. No more reconsideration of that article. Onwards. So our next article is Article 4, the Unanticipated Utility Costs Expendable Trust Fund. And it's on the screen. We can all read along. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District vote to raise and appropriate up to $75,000 to be placed in the unanticipated utility costs expendable trust fund previously established. This sum to come from June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, instead of returning the money to the community to offset taxes. No amount to be raised from taxation. Recommended by the Budget Committee, in favor of 6, opposed 0. Recommended by the Sanborn Regional School Board, in favor 7, opposed 0. It has an estimated tax impact for Kingston of $0 per thousand and Newton $0 per thousand. Questions, discussion? Would someone from the board want to take up the explanation of that?
Again. So we're asking for 75,000 to be put into the unanticipated utility costs. So this fund would be used to offset any unanticipated increases in heating oil, electricity, anything that's utility related. And it would be coming from fund balance that we would have on hand at year end. So we wouldn't be asking for the taxpayers for any contribution towards this.
Any additional
Or
contribution?
additional contribution, yes.
Yes, sir.
Barry Gleck from Newton. Given the recent volatility in utilities expenses, why do we believe that this is enough? 75,000 for a district our size, just on a
Go ahead.
basic level, so it seems kind of low to me, given what's going on.
So the thought process behind it, at least my thought process behind it in discussions, we have 75,500 in the fund presently that we put in last year. And we decided to try and avoid spending that. So we talked at the beginning of the year, do we want to just pull that money down? And we said, we're really going to need it more towards the end of the year. And then we decided that that probably wasn't enough. And we chose this amount in order to get that up to about 150,000, because we thought with 150,000, that would give us the leeway that we needed to cover any shortfalls that we weren't otherwise be able to cover. So we do think it's going to be adequate. Clearly, with the volatility that's out there, if things go crazy again, probably not. Things are coming down at present. We believe it would be adequate, but it's certainly a debatable proposition.
Other questions, comments, and discussion regarding this article? Seeing there are none, Article 4 will go on the ballot as presented.
Mr. Moderator,
I'm kind of expecting that motion. Go ahead, please.
move to restrict reconsideration of Article 4.
Second.
Second, Evan, thank you. Again, motion to restrict reconsideration. All in favor? Anyone opposed? The ayes carry. It will not be reconsidered. Article 5. We have that slide already. You're one step ahead of me. All right. Capital Reserve Fund, Capital Improvement and Maintenance. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District vote to raise and appropriate up to $50,000 to be placed in the Capital Improvement and Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund previously established? This sum to come from June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, instead of returning the money to the community to offset taxes. No amount to be raised from taxation. It was recommended by the Budget Committee, in favor 6, opposed 0. Recommended by the Sanborn Regional School Board, in favor 7, opposed 0. Estimated tax impact for Kingston, $0 per thousand, Newton $0 per thousand. Who'd like to talk about that one?
Okay.
Poor Mr. Angel, I'm looking right
Yeah,
at.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So we're asking for $50,000 to be placed into the capital improvement, it's capital reserve fund. We can use this fund for emergency repairs, improvements, or maintenance of the building. We actually have to go to the school board to go and ask permission to withdraw funds. Historically, we haven't withdrawn funds from it. However, we are trying to consider tying this particular capital improvement maintenance fund to our CIP plan and use the funds to fund some future projects.
Thank you.
Could I
Yes,
also?
sir.
I just think it's important for everyone to understand that we do finally have an adopted strategic plan. And within that strategic plan, we have an adopted capital improvement plan, and that plan does not have funds allocated to each project. And personally, I do not believe that $324,489 plus $50,000 is going to be enough to fund the things that need to be done. But we also have the closing of a $2.4 million bond on the high school in another year or two. So we are planning very carefully to look at capital upgrades for the memorial school and the Bakey schools at the time that the bond comes off for the high school to try to mitigate the burden on the taxpayers. So we have a plan, and we feel that this 50,000 will move us in the direction toward that plan. The needs at the memorial school are pretty significant. There's a portable unit attached to the back of the building, and that unit is past its life expectancy, but it's holding up. It gives us cold sweats every once in a while. We get a little nervous about that, but it seems to be holding up for now, and we are maintaining it and treating it as if. There's also a portable building outside at the memorial school that really is out of date and needs to be updated more or replaced. So I do think that it is important for the leadership to be transparent with the community. And while I have you here, I'm saying to you, there's going to be some kind of a capital process for the memorial school at some point in the future, and a very hearty discussion about what's needed at the Bakey school. So before you vote on this, I just want you to know we recognize that the contractual obligations, the special education obligations, and the other things that are in the 1.3 million are a lot of money. And so we kept this at 50,000 for this year, but we'll be debating this more in the future.
Thank you. Do we have other comments or questions regarding Article 5? Seeing there are none, Article 5 will go on to the ballot as presented.
Mr. Moderator, move to restrict reconsideration of Article 5.
All in favor? Anyone opposed?
It doesn't matter.
That actually concludes our business for tonight. Do we have any other topics people would just like to speak on briefly in a sort of non-binding way that the voters would like to bring up at this time? Yes.
Sorry, I don't mean to monopolize. Is it okay to ask who on the board and the budget committee are seeking re-election?
I don't see why not. I don't think they're going to be campaigning and endorsing themselves, but they certainly can speak to who is and who isn't. Yes, of course.
I am up, my term is up, and I am actually going to be running for the at-large seat in March.
Anyone else? Okay. Any other questions or topics before we wrap up for the evening? I'd like to thank you all for coming. I think it's an important thing to come out and a not too bad, not too cold night, but to come out and participate in this event. It's an important thing. I want to thank, of course, all the board members for all the work they've done and the administrators in preparing all this for tonight. And the next step is now for the voters to get out in March and get out there and vote. So thank you very much. Can we have a motion to adjourn for the evening until the second session?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? You lost. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Drive safe.